My name is Bennett Smith. I am 16 years old and this is my training video. I started out training my horse. His name is Winston. He was a barrel racing horse that was abused. He had issues with going through gates and he would rear and bolt and just refuse to go through them once he was in. So I trained him to be a jumping horse to get him out of the Western world where he was having issues. And eventually, once he was able to reach performance levels in jumping, I turned him back into a Western horse once he was comfortable, and he is now a drill team horse that I use for competitions. And this is Autumn. She is a horse that we found at a farm. She was starving to death, and we rescued her from there. We have been slowly building her back up to be able to be ridden, and I'm going to be using her in my trailering video. Ever since we got her, she has been refusing to get on the trailer. She's been rearing and just absolutely not wanting to get on. So I decided that I would work with her on this to help out her owner so that she would be able to bring her places once she is able to be ridden again. And this is a picture of her a month after we got her. She looks a lot better than she used to before. Whenever I start training a new horse for trailering, I like to use a lunge line so that they can choose to get on themselves. I always put pressure on their hind end with the back of the lunge line and just ease them in. That way it's their choice. They choose to go in. They're more confident once they do decide to get in. And once they put one foot on, I take the pressure off, and I just go through that process multiple times until eventually they decide that they are safe enough to get on the trailer by themselves. With Autumn, once she realized that she was safe and nothing in the trailer was going to hurt her, she came to the idea of getting on the trailer very quickly. It only took probably about 10 or 15 minutes for me to get her confident enough to get on the trailer. We did have some ups and downs there. She tried to run me over a couple of times trying to get out of the way, but it was quickly corrected once she realized that she was safe and nothing on the trailer was going to hurt her.
Okay.
A pony that I started training recently is a pony named Elsa. She came to me from a lady who wanted to use her as a lesson horse for her special needs child. She came from a petting zoo type situation. She was used for birthday parties, so she never really had any real training in the saddle or with a bridle on. She was always just put in a halter and led around in a circle. So once I got her, she had bucking problems. She had problems with respect and just treating people right and not stepping over them. So it took a while, but now she is up to being able to be ridden by the child at a walk and a trot. For the training video, I decided to use her in doing things that she had never done before. She has never actually gotten on the trailer. She was walked over from her farm to ours, so I didn't exactly know what to expect with that. I used the same method of getting her to get on by herself to see how she would do, and she was great at it. She went on right away, no problems whatsoever. When I first introduced Elsa to the tarp, it was super windy outside, so I decided I would introduce it to her in the barn, and she was perfect at that too. She went right up to it. She was a little hesitant at first. She had never heard the crinkling noise it made when she walked over it, but once she sniffed it with her nose and pawed it, she was perfect. Usually with horses, I start out by walking them over it multiple times in one area where there's not much wind or anything like that can move the tarp. That'll get it to rustle and spook the horse. I want them to have a good experience with walking over it before introducing them to anything that would cause them to have any distress with the item. Once I was confident that Elsa was comfortable with walking over the tarp in the barn and felt safe in doing so, I brought it out into the grass where it could blow around and rustle in the wind. And I started out easy again, just walking over it confidently with her, being right there so that she felt safe. And then once I knew that she was comfortable with doing that, I moved it up to a trot, so she was trotting over it. I did it from both sides so she could see it from different angles. And then once she was confident with that, I stood her on the tarp and backed her off of it. Since Elsa would be working with a special needs child, I wanted to make sure that she was completely desensitized to anything that might happen. If the child dropped something or waved something in front of her, I wanted to make sure she wouldn't do anything that would harm the child. So I decided I would take a boogie board with a string attached to it and drag it around. It makes a bunch of noise, and she was perfectly fine. Before I get on a horse, I always start by lunging them. This gets their attention on me. They start thinking about their job that they're going to be doing, and it also teaches them respect and bonding. I always like to make sure that I have a good bond with a horse before I try to get on them. That way, they are more comfortable with doing things that I ask them to do. Elsa had never been told to back up before, and this was the first time I asked her to do it while I was on her. She was a little hesitant at first, locking up her shoulders and throwing her head up in a defensive position. So I turned her in circles to get her momentum going and letting her know that she needs to move, and by blocking the forward motion, she had to go backwards.
Come on, girl. Back up. Do it for me. Good girl. Okay, cut.
Since Elsa is a relatively young horse and she had never been taught to be ridden in a saddle with a bridle before, she had a bucking problem anytime I would ask her to canter. So to fix this, anytime that she would buck or do anything stupid and crow hop, I would have her do a circle and let her know that the action that she did was unacceptable. And every time that she went around a corner and she didn't buck, I would give her praise and release the pressure. Aria is a foal that first came to me when she was about 2.5 years old. Her owner wanted her to be saddle trained. She was half Tennessee Walker, half quarter horse, and she had a lot of respect issues. She would run all over people. She would kick at them and bite. And so I started her off with round penning and teaching her just basic respect for people and getting her ready in the right foundations for getting in the saddle. So I started out with the saddle in the round pen, and I round pinned her first and got the bond with her. And then I just put a saddle on. I kept her rope halter on because I wanted her to have a good experience without being confused by a bridle or anything big and heavy on her face. And it was something she was familiar with, so she got a good experience while I was riding her. And I just asked her to pick up the trot. I didn't have any pressure on her. I was using my legs to keep her on the rail. and she was pretty good. I only had one incident where she was bucking, but overall she had a great experience for first ride.